Hey everybody, hope you're doing well. This week's video, we are finally returning to my bread and butter, which is Life is Strange. I know I've been covering a lot of The Last of Us, especially The Last of Us TV show, which I have a lot of opinions about if you follow my Twitter, which link below by the way. But this week, we're going to be talking about not a game from Life is Strange, but the upcoming Life is Strange TV show. Now, many of you may be wondering, wait, what? There's a TV show in development? That's exactly what I was thinking, 2 years ago now when I first heard of it. There have been many different producers, many different production companies, writing companies that have come and gone throughout the past few years in relation to this show. So today we're going to be sitting down, looking at everything we know so far about the Life is Strange TV show, and I'm going to give you my opinion about what direction I think they're going to go, or if the show is even going to come out. So without further ado, let's talk about the Life is Strange TV show. The Life is Strange TV show was initially announced all the way back in 2016. It was announced following the huge success that the first game got. It really blew up. If you were playing games, if you remember the Life is Strange 1 release window when new episodes were coming out and YouTubers were talking about it, it was electric. So it's no wonder that Square Enix / Don't Nod immediately wanted to capitalize on it by trying to get some sort of TV show developed. Now back then, video game to TV adaptations were not really as common or as acclaimed as they are today. I think the only ones that were really of note back then were the ones that were absolutely awful, like the Doom movies starring The Rock, as well as the Angelina Jolie-led Tomb Raider movies. However, I've heard that some of those are actually pretty fun action movies, so I'm not here to judge. Then, in the following years, we would end up getting movies like Assassin's Creed, which was very, very dull and really didn't get that much financial success, as well as the Tomb Raider reboot, which also went for a much more gritty and realistic tone that didn't really land with audiences. However, the thinking behind getting Life is Strange into a TV show was that it's already formatted like a TV show. It has different episodes. It's very story-driven. There's not much in terms of action or huge set pieces. It's really just Max going to a place, talking to people, and then going to a different place, talking to different people. The only action or special effects behind it is with the time travel, as well as some of the dream sequences. So I think in Square Enix's mind, it just made sense that even back then, Life is Strange, in their minds, could work as a TV show. But that was all the information we got about the show. They announced it in 2016, and until 2022, we didn't hear a single thing about it, which that's already a red flag. It seems like what happened was they just weren't happy with anything that they had developed early on and decided to sort of kick the can down the road. The original creators were busy working on Life is Strange 2, and they had Deck 9 busy working on Before the Storm. There's a term that gets thrown around a lot when a game, movie, or TV show sort of isn't canceled, but it isn't exactly coming out anytime soon, and we're not getting constant, or at least regular, updates for it. This is called development hell, and this perfectly describes the situation that the Life is Strange TV show is stuck in. Another example of development hell would be something like the most recent Duke Nukem game, which was developed for multiple different generations of consoles and bounced around to tons of different studios. It was never fully canceled, and in fact, it did release, but it wasn't very good. This sort of delay and bouncing around and all that stuff is what development hell is, and I believe that's what's going on with the Life is Strange TV show. And frankly, I'm not really surprised because you're trying to condense a very long video game that has multiple branching paths and very, very passionate fans who care about each of these individual outcomes into a linear TV show. Various production companies have come in and worked on the show. They've come and gone, and new groups come in and others leave, and some try to work together. There aren't tons of details or really exact details about that sort of era between 2016 and 2022 where we had a lot coming and going, but one thing we can assume is that back when it was pitched in 2016 that it was initially going to be on cable television. While in 2016, streaming services did exist and there were original series on streaming services, it really didn't seem like a super viable thing all the way back then, until the release of Stranger Things later that year. But like I said, we can assume that it would have been cable at first because Stranger Things wasn't out when they had initially announced this TV show adaptation. So if this version of the show got off the ground very quickly, it's very likely that we would have seen it on a cable TV channel like the CW. With all the angst that comes with those CW shows like Riverdale and things like that, it honestly, as weird as it is to say, I think Life is Strange would fit as a CW TV show. I don't think it would be amazing, but it would certainly fit. But like I said, with the release of Stranger Things the summer of 2016, streaming services really began to take off, and television shows and movies that came out directly on those services were seen as legitimate shows, high-quality content, rather than something that's just shoveled off to the side. This is around when a group called Anonymous Content joined the production. I don't know exactly when, but at some point, I believe after 2016, a group called Anonymous Content is rumored to have joined the production of Life is Strange. They're a group that's behind series like 13 Reasons Why, and I believe the reason they were brought on board was because of 13 Reasons Why, which released in 2017. While 13 Reasons Why isn't exactly an amazing show, the first season does an okay job of capturing the sort of darker side of high school, and it's very over-dramatized, that kind of thing. But considering the setting of Life is Strange being at a glorified high school, the over-the-top drama, the over-the-top angst, bringing in a group that worked on a show that, in my opinion, has similar qualities to the game. Obviously, 13 Reasons Why is a lot darker and Life is Strange is a little more fantastical, but both of them deal with suicide, both of them deal with themes of depression and mental health. It sort of makes sense that they would want to bring these people in to help translate the game to the screen. Presumably a little after this, like I said, I don't have specific dates, but we do know that at some point in time, Amazon Studios, DJ2, and Lucky Chap, which are all production groups, came on board the show. The addition of Amazon makes it seem that the show did officially make the jump to streaming and will be coming out presumably on Amazon Prime, or one of the other streaming services that's owned by Amazon. The other studios I mentioned, like DJ2, are very interesting additions and actually give me a little bit of hope. DJ2 has sort of a niche when it comes to these video game adaptations. They've worked on many, many different ones, good and bad. And it seems that they were brought in to sort of help, once again, translate the game and the gameplay aspect to the screen. It appears that they had pretty much everyone involved in the production, at least in a creative sense, play the game. So that's a good sign, because you have shows like the Halo show that, you know, nobody played the game or even read the books, and they really wanted to do something different, but that's not really what fans are looking for. They're looking for a faithful adaptation, at least in some way. You have shows like Fallout where it's not a one-to-one remake of Fallout 3, 4, New Vegas, but it is a faithful retelling of a Fallout story. Finally, Lucky Chap, another group that I mentioned, joined the production. Is actually Margot Robbie's production group, and it appears that she will be a producer on this show. Now, the reason that I feel this is a good thing is because of their focus on female-led content. Lucky Chap tends to produce and focus on stories that revolve around women, and I would say this is a good thing because Life is Strange has always told a lot of women's stories and a lot of queer stories. I think that's a good addition because, yes, it's 100% possible for a male writer to understand and empathize with themes of feminism and the female experience and write it accurately. However, I think it's good that we have a production company whose focus is on that to sort of course correct and that kind of thing. As some of you know, I'm a writer. I write, I've written many different drafts of movies that will probably never come out. I've tried to sell scripts. I've got a short film I'm hoping to do this summer, actually. When it comes to writing women, I always ask for advice on that that, because while I am able to empathize and understand certain struggles and certain aspects of being a woman, I am not one at the end of the day. So being open, asking those questions is a very good thing. And all that to say, I just think it's a good sign that they have this group joining, because I think it will avoid some of these stereotypical pitfalls of a man trying to write a woman. Then again, we also don't really know who the head writer is on this show. A lot of that has been hush-hush. I don't believe they've named a showrunner yet. So really, that's up in the air. That's a lot of conjecture. But point is, I think it's a good thing that this group is a part of the project. Like I said, a lot of these are rumors. There's not much concrete info about this show or its production or the casting. A lot of it is rumors, except for this last thing that really makes me worried. Let me lay this out for you. I want you to think of the music of Life is Strange. I'm sure I have some playing in the background right now. But when you think of the music, what comes to mind? For me, it would be Daughter's soundtrack from Before the Storm, because that's my favorite game. And the vibe that comes with it. That soundtrack plays such an important role in setting the tone of that game. For others, like fans of the first game, it would be Dawkins, Sid Meier's, among others. And that sets the tone for the game. The music has always been a staple of the Life is Strange series. So when it comes to the TV show, what do you think they would do when it comes to the music? Do you think they would just rip tracks straight from the game, which would be a serviceable thing? I think that would be just fine if they reused some of the tracks from the game. Or do you think they bring back an artist or one artist who had a song on the game to compose the entire thing, similar to what they did with Daughter for Before the Storm? Or maybe you bring in Hannah Telle, the original voice of Max, who is an accomplished musician who's done a lot of covers of famous Life is Strange songs, such as Obstacle. Bring her in to record at least a few songs for the show and maybe even do more. No, that's not what they did. They didn't do any of that. You know what they did do? They brought in Shawn Mendes. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it was confirmed that Shawn Mendes will be doing the music for the Life is Strange TV show. And that was the very first detail I heard about the show. And that's one of the most concrete details we have about the show. So maybe all the good conjecture and good speculation I had can go out the window if they're, gonna do something like that. Pick a semi-popular artist from that 2016 era to do the music. So all of that to say, that's all the rumors, that's all the concrete, well, the last thing's concrete, everything else is rumors. But that's all the information that we really have right now that we can use to speculate. So now I'm going to get into more of an opinion-based thing. I think it's safe to say that this is going to be rough, and that the production itself has been and will continue to be rough. I say that because the drip feed of information, the new studios coming in, coming out, the decision with the music, has painted the picture of a production that doesn't really know what direction it wants to go in. Does it want to be a dark and edgy high school drama similar to 13 Reasons Why? Does it want to be more of an empowering feminist type story, like Margot Robbie's production company is probably pushing for it to be? Or does it want to be a serious video game adaptation that takes a bit of both, like what DJ2 most likely has in mind? Not that all of these things can't be true. I'm not saying it can't be dark, it can't be a feminist story, and it can't be a faithful adaptation. The game itself is a mixture of all these things. I'm just saying that having too many cooks in the kitchen is usually a bad thing. When it comes to what the story itself may be, I think it's going to be whatever the writers deem to be the most complete narrative from the game. Like for me, that would be sort of Max learning to find herself and learn that there's more to people than just what she thinks, that people are three-dimensional and you should really take the time to get to know people. And for Chloe, that would be learning that the town itself isn't this just blanket hellhole, horrible place, but that there's individuals in there who deserve more. They deserve to go on with their lives. And that's ultimately why, in the end, she asks you not to sacrifice the town for her. At least that's my interpretation. I'm not going to go into my full opinions and beliefs on the ending of the game right now, but that's just kind of my surface level idea. And that's what I think the writers will aim for, because it's the most narratively satisfying. You have this character who hates the town. She says many times she wants to turn it to glass, and she doesn't give a crap about anybody who lives here. But by the end, she's saying they don't deserve to die. Warren, my mom, even David, all these people, they don't deserve to die just for my life. And that's why she begs Max not to do it. And I think that's a narratively satisfying idea. And I think that's what the writers will probably go for. I think in terms of the smaller decisions, I think Alyssa will definitely get her little moments of Max helping her out with the little things of like, oh, the toilet paper hit her, oh, the football bounced the wrong way and smacked her in the head. We'll get that. Kate Marsh will probably survive her suicide attempt, but that makes me wonder if she's actually going to do a little more in the story, because one of the criticisms with the first game is that Kate doesn't do much after the suicide. Keeping her alive, other than being a feel-good moment, doesn't really do much. So that also makes me wonder if maybe they'll let her die, and they'll sort of let that serve as a lesson for Max, that sort of Dark Night of the Soul part of the story where all is lost, everything's horrible. I know we kind of get that later when Max is kidnapped and Chloe is shot, but still sort of another depressing downer type scene to sort of up the ante about, hey, the stakes are higher than ever for Max. And I also think, even though I don't necessarily ship Max and Chloe, that's just me. I know I'm going to get a lot of boos and whatever's in the comment. I just think that can be a toxic relationship. I kind of like this story more as just these friends reuniting and finding themselves again and sort of reigniting that childhood bond that they have. That's how I like the story. That's just me personally. But I think with how impactful the romance side of it was for younger people in the queer community, I think they will have them go down a more romantic path in this TV show. Because let's face it, a lot of fans ship them. I know I'm in the minority when I say I don't necessarily ship Max and Chloe. I've always seen it that Chloe really belongs with Rachel because, like I said, Before the Storm is my favorite. I've said that before. I'll say it again. So in my mind, Chloe has always been in love with Rachel, and that she doesn't truly love Max, and that her heart is always going to be with Rachel, no matter how horrible and toxic that relationship was. That's a whole other can of worms. So that's the way I've always seen it. I don't really like the romance route for Max and Chloe. However, I think that's what the writers will do. I don't agree with it, but I think many fans will enjoy that, I think. Warren is probably in danger of being cast aside the most, simply because his character is meant to be sort of the cute, nerdy crush that, you know, Max kind of flirts with. And if you want to go that route, like I do and like some of my friends mostly do in the game, it sort of they have a cute little romance in that kind of timeline. But I think they might aim for kind of a love triangle situation. As crazy as that sounds, you gotta think, this was pitched all the way back in 2016. I'm sure in some early draft, at the very least, they amped up the love triangle between Max having to pick between Warren and Chloe. But I think Warren's character is going to suffer the most at the hands of, you know, editing scenes down and cutting out dialogue. That's just my opinion. But they also might try to amp that up, like I said. So who really knows? Like I said, this is a lot of speculation. A friend of mine suggested that it's possible that they sort of are trying to find a way to bring in the other games, like the other characters, and sort of tie that in. Now that we have this sprawling world of different characters, and with Double Exposure wanting to set up some sort of crossover type thing, makes me wonder if the TV show has sort of been delayed because they're like, no, we have a bigger plan here, just wait and we can tie it all in. Or if it is just traditional development hell of we just can't find a producer, that kind of thing. But all that to say, coming back to the ending real quick, ultimately I do think Chloe will die. I don't think she will survive. And once again, the Bayers, the spelling I mean, are going to be disappointed and they're going to feel jaded and that kind of thing. And real quick, there's nothing wrong with wanting to save Chloe. I think that narratively, it's the weaker of the two endings, especially since I think long term that relationship doesn't work out, and that kind of was confirmed in Double Exposure, as well as by the creator noting that the pair of them weren't smiling, and that was an intentional moment in Life is Strange 2 in the photo that you can find. But like I said, I want to clarify, there's nothing inherently wrong with liking that ending more, and I think some people misinterpreted my words when I said that a large portion of hate for Double Exposure came from people who weren't happy about how that ending was handled. What I meant in that case is that the sort of toxic hate, the outrageous hate, was that group of people. You can dislike Double Exposure for legitimate reasons, and there are people who didn't necessarily love that their preferred ending wasn't treated very well, but still went on to take the game for what it was, and they didn't hold anything against it because of that. And maybe they found things they disliked, maybe they did like the game. But when I say that the toxic bayers, the sort of die-hard, almost toxic fans, I mean that group of people who purely hated on that game and the writers simply because Chloe doesn't show up and she's my favorite character, and you're wrong because in the comic book it says this, blah, blah, blah. It's not that deep. It's not that deep. And trust me, I have seen some comments from people. I think, don't go searching for it, but somebody posted like 5 or 6 paragraph-long comments on multiple of my videos talking about how us bayers, that spelling, get everything we want, and how it's half the fan base who's rioting, not just a small group. No, I mean the small group are the people who are going insane over this, and the other half, the majority, are just like, wow, that stinks that my favorite ending wasn't in there, but anyway, I'm gonna move on with my life because it's a video game. That's all I mean. I apologize for my little rant there. Back to the TV show. All that to say, I think we are in trouble. I don't think it's gonna be a phenomenal project just with how long it's taken. Usually, when you get to this point in that kind of thing, you get a Duke Nukem situation, like I said, where there's so many cooks in the kitchen and it's so outdated that by the time it gets out there, it's sort of being pulled in all these different directions from past directors, past writers, past production groups that wanted it to go this way and wanted it to go that way, and, you know, that kind of thing. So really, only time will tell if the show even comes out. So let me know in the comments what you think. Do you think the TV show is going to be good? What ending do you think they're going to go with? And thank you so much for watching. I appreciate every single one of you, and I hope you have a good morning or evening or, you know, whatever.